Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I've got some good news today. Interest rates are down. Yes, that's right, folks. Buyers and sellers are both getting a little bit of relief from the very high interest rates we've had. In fact, the highest interest rates we've had in about the last 20 or so years. So let's just get right into it. So as you'll see, this is from the Mortgage News Daily. 30-year fixed mortgage rates. The average price now, as of today, 7.48%. And this actually just ticked up on Friday afternoon. It dipped down to 7.38%, which is the lowest interest rate we've seen since, about September 29th or so, give or take a little bit there. So finally getting some relief for buyers and sellers in this market. Of course, when interest rates go down, buyers have a little bit more buying power, and they can make that same dollar go a little bit further. For sellers, this helps because this might help pull some buyers in off the sideline that have maybe been waiting or maybe thinking that rates are just a little bit too high right now and the payment for the home that I need is just a little bit more than I can afford. And this interest rate difference, even though it may seem small, is actually quite significant. And I'll show you a little bit more about that right now. One thing that I want to look at is the year-over-year change in interest rates. And this is kind of a measure of how the market has fluctuated in comparison to what we've already faced and already dealt with. So November 6, 2023, today, we're looking at about 7.48% for the interest rate. This time last year, it was 7.29%. So actually not that big of a difference in comparison to where we were this time last year. However, if we go back and we look at just where we were October 31st of 2023, we were at 7.88%. October 31st of 2022, we were at 7.13%. So that's a change of 0.75%. And that's quite a bit. So as you can see, we're trending in the right direction and we are bringing some relief to buyers. Interest rates are going down, which is good, but why are they going down and what difference will it make? Well, we're gonna need both those things right now. So as you can see, the US 10-year Treasury is currently at 4.647%. And that actually has ticked up a little bit. Friday, when this news was announced, it actually was at its lowest in quite some time. It was down to 4.5. Now, keep in mind, the US 10-year Treasury does not dictate mortgage interest rates, but it's very closely tied together with mortgage interest rates. And oftentimes, mortgage interest rates will reflect what the 10-year Treasury does. So although the 10-year Treasury doesn't set mortgage interest rates, they are usually in lockstep and they usually are connected. When one goes up, typically the other goes up and vice versa. So the next question is well, why did the 10-year Treasury go down? And that has a lot to do with some of the most recent economic data that we have uncovered just over the last about week or so. So this article from CNBC actually does a really good job in summing up why we're experiencing this recent decrease in interest rates. US payrolls increased by 150,000 in October, less than expected. And we'll get into what that means right now. So key points: non-farm payrolls increased by 150,000 for the month, against the consensus forecast for a raise of 170,000. This was a sharp decline from the gain of 297,000 in September. And we'll kind of dissect this a little bit more in just a moment. The unemployment rate rose to 3.9%, the highest level since January 2022, amid a drop in household employment. So even though that number is not very big, and you'll see what you're comparing that unemployment rate to, it only went up about 0.1%. And of course, it's never great when people lose jobs, but the Fed takes that into account when they calculate inflation. And if more people are out of work and there are less jobs added to the economy, then very clearly it's going to keep people from spending money. And if people don't spend money, then inflation has to come down. The US economy saw job creation decelerate in October, confirming persistent expectations for a slowdown and possibly taking some heat off the Federal Reserve in its fight against inflation, which is just what we were kind of talking about. Non-farm payrolls increased by 150,000 for the month. The Labor Department reported Friday against the Dow Jones consensus forecast for a raise of 170,000. The United Auto Workers strikes, which have been going on. And if you've been reading the news, we had a huge auto worker strike in Detroit and all throughout the United States, and they were fighting for higher wages. And that is just one reason that we believe that maybe job creation was down. Let's take a look at this graph right here. This is the monthly job creation in the US, and this goes from January 2022 through October 2023. And as you can see, here we are in 2023, on October 2023, and we've added 150,000 jobs. Again, the estimate was 170,000 jobs. And if we look back to September of 2023, we added almost 300,000 jobs. So in that light, we're about half as much jobs added in October as we did in September, showing that there is a little bit of decrease in the strength of jobs out there. And if we throw out June 2023, we're going to see that October actually added the fewest jobs since before this chart even started back in January 2022. Now, obviously, the metric of monthly job creation goes back much further than January 2022, but for the sake of the chart that we're looking at, this is a pretty significant indicator of what the job market is doing. The unemployment rate rose to 3.9%, the highest level since January 2022, against expectations that it would hold steady at 3.8%. Now remember, I said back at the beginning there was only about 0.1% difference, and here it is right here. Employment as measured in the household survey, which is used to compute the unemployment rate, showed a decline of 348,000 workers, while the rolls of the unemployed rose by 146,000. And some people theorize that, as winter hits, it does kind of slow down the job market. This is not something that we haven't seen before. This isn't uncharacteristic. As companies get to the end of year, they start trying to figure out what their needs for the next year, and that may mean hiring employees, but oftentimes it means laying off employees or putting a stop in the hiring process, which would lead to a decrease in job creation. Another really important metric to look at is hourly earnings. Average hourly earnings, a key measurement for inflation, increased 0.2% for the month, less than the 0.3% forecast, while the 4.1% year-over-year gain was 0.1 percentage point above expectations. The average work week nudged lower to 3.4 hours. So even though there's two sentences here, these are really, really important. Basically what they're saying, and keep in mind, what they're talking about here is a key metric for inflation measurement that the Fed is looking at. And what they're saying is hourly wages didn't increase at the rate they thought they would. And not only did that happen, but the number of hours worked per employee actually fell by a little bit, and they nudged down to 34.3 hours. The Fed uses wage data as one component of the inflation watch. The central bank has opted not to raise interest rates at its past two meetings, despite inflation running well above its 2% target. And again, we've been hearing this from the Fed all year. They're fixated on a 2% inflation target. And even though we're not quite there yet, they're starting to see us trend in that direction. And they've caused a lot of shock to the economy and specifically the housing market, which we've all seen. And they're starting to kind of ease that back a little bit. Now, that's not to say that interest rates are going to decrease again anytime soon, but that's likely to mean that they're not going to increase anytime soon. Speaking of that, it would be kind of nice to know, obviously it would be really nice to know what the Fed is going to do when it comes to interest rates. And while obviously we don't have a crystal ball and we don't know for sure, there is a group out there that does use some very advanced statistics to basically hypothesize and estimate what the Fed could do. Let's take a look at that right now. So what you're seeing is a graph from the CME group, and the CME group is basically a Fed watch tool, and it basically monitors and keeps tabs on what the Fed is doing, when their meetings are, and sort of all the data that the Fed has access to. And with that information, the CME group makes a prediction based on the data that they have on whether or not the Fed could increase rates, hold rates, or decrease rates. Now, when we talk about the Fed and the Fed rates, that's exactly what it is, the Fed rate. It's not mortgage rates. But keep in mind, the Fed rate and the mortgage rate are tied together and they typically move hand in hand. When the Fed rate goes down, typically the mortgage rate goes down as well. And this is what we want to take a look at right here. What is the likelihood that the Fed will change the federal target rate at their upcoming meetings according to the interest rate traders? One thing that I want to make sure y'all are aware of is this data changes very, very quickly. In fact, this data and numbers has already changed a couple times since this morning when I looked at this information to prepare for this filming. So by the time you read this, this could be a little bit different, but the theory and the hypothesis is still going to ring true for the most part. So looking at this, there's two bars on the screen here, and what these bars signify is where the CME group thinks that rates could go at the next Fed meeting. The next Fed meeting is December 13th of this year. And the CME group thinks that there's about a 12.3% chance that the basis points will be between 550 and 575. Basically, what that means is the CME group thinks that there's a 12.3% chance that the interest rate could go up to 5.5 to 5.75%, somewhere in that window. However, there's an 87.7% chance that the Fed does not raise rates and they keep it in the 5.25 to 5.5 window. So this is really interesting. The CME group really does think that there's not going to be an interest rate increase before the end of the year. And that also aligns with some of the other analyses and data that other experts have seen as well. Again, this is good for buyers. It should keep interest rates stable. And we've even seen some prices start to reduce a little bit. And if you remember my last video from last week, one of the criteria that we needed to happen was interest rates to stay stable and prices to come down, or prices to stay stable and interest rates to come down. And that likely could happen. Now, is it going to be a big amount? Probably not. But with the affordability crisis that we have, any little bit is going to help. Another really interesting part about this is if we compare this to 1 month ago. So again, right now there's an 87.7% chance, according to the CME group, that interest rates will stay where they're at. Just 1 month ago, the odds of the current interest rates holding steady was just 57.6%. And the odds of them increasing at this next Fed meeting were 36.7%. So as you can see, this new data has really changed what we think the Fed might do. And when I say this new data, I'm specifically referring to the job data. And it's really, really making a difference. Another thing that we can do is we can kind of see what the Fed might do in 2024. So let's just click on the May 1st. So the Fed is going to meet May 1st of 2024. That's one of their meeting dates that's scheduled on the calendar. And as we can see here, the target rate of 5.25 to 5.50, which is where it's at right now, is 44.2%. So there's a 44.2% chance that rates will hold steady. That's pretty dang good. There's only a 7.9% chance that rates could go up. And there's a 39.3% chance that we could see rates fall by up to 0.25%. And there's even an 8.3% chance that we could see rates fall by 0.5%. So again, these are just projections. These are just very well-educated hypotheses. It's not written in stone. However, this is a very good indicator that we could be seeing some very serious housing relief in the next 6 to 12 months or so. Although this isn't groundbreaking news, this is trending in the right direction, and it could end up really helping a lot of home buyers, and it really could help stimulate the home buying and selling market. Of course, we have no idea what's going to happen, and I'm sure we'll continue to keep our eyes on the Fed, but at least things are trending in the right direction. If you missed my video last week about affordability, it goes hand in hand with this video, and you can click right over here to watch the affordability video. And if you want to learn more about the real estate process, you can click right over here to this video and learn about how to write a winning offer. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time.